So in the United States, what I hear is, well, we've got two choices. Costs are constrained in every country I have visited over this last year. And people are saying, we've got these demands, we've got these challenges, the population needs us more than they ever have. We've got two choices. We can cut costs, or we can ration care. But what I'm going to propose to you this morning is that there really is a third way, and that is new designs. I'm going to show you some this morning, but really come to say that the answer is here in the country, that their best exists. One of my board members at IHI always says, we're excellent at everything, but just not everywhere. And that's what Koa'atea can mean for you, is that you get together and you can see where the excellence exists, and you can then spread it to everywhere. So what does that mean? It means that we need new eyes. I love this quote by Albert Szent-Györgyi. He said, discovery consists in seeing what everyone else has seen and thinking what no one else has thought. And that's what this place is about. It's a place to get out of the complexity and the hustle bustle, and it's a place to come and think new thoughts, to see new things. Every year for Christmas, I give my family, I think it's a great Christmas present. When they open up their Christmas present, it's an exotic trip somewhere. And the great thing is I get to plan it and I get to go. So I'd highly recommend this as a Christmas present. But 2 years ago, I gave my family a trip to Bhutan. And of course, the first thing that we did when we landed is I said, I want to go to hospitals and schools. And so my family kind of comes along. But I was walking out of a school, and the ironic thing about Bhutan, I don't know if you've been there, is you can see from this beautiful woman that they're all in traditional dress. Every woman wears a beautiful plaid jacket that comes down to here and a long skirt that goes to the ground. And every man wears kind of what would be in the United States like a plaid bathrobe. And you have to leave your home in the dress of the profession of the nation. And yet everybody speaks perfect English. And they actually are tucking their cell phones into their bathrobes. So it's an ironic and wonderful place. But I was walking out of a school, and this young student was there, and she was so beautiful. So we started to talk to her, and you could tell from yesterday, I take pictures of everything. So I said to her, can I take your picture? And she said, yes. And when I got home, I was showing Don Berwick my pictures, and he started laughing. And I said, why are you laughing? And he said, look at the name of her book. It's Quality is Never an Accident. And I thought, how ironic. I didn't even see that. It's a book I've read. It's a book in English. And here this Bhutanese young student is carrying around a book called Quality is Never an Accident. And it reminds me that we really do need new ways to see. We need new ways to lead. So I think that you could take the Institute of Medicine's 6 aims and say, this is the healthcare system. If we start to segregate populations or patients in need, if you start to take a look and say, how are we doing on these 6 aims? And you can't pick one, you need to pick all. I think it really gives you a guide. And then I might suggest that you Xerox this when you get the presentation and tape this up over your desk, because these 10 simple rules from the Institute of Medicine some 11 years ago, I think are a great framework as we're going from taking care of an individual to redesigning care for a population. So when you download the slides, this is one. I'd recommend that you Xerox and tape over your desk, because it is, I think, the roadmap to better healthcare designs. And then we need to think about aims. So yesterday you heard about the IHI's triple aim. And it's really, rather than think about a diabetic patient's hemoglobin, how do we as healthcare leaders come together and say, we need to work on the health of the population and the experience of care, and we've got to get to grips on the cost, because I think just cutting cost isn't the right option. So we've got simple rules and we've got an aim, and now we need, I think, new ways to lead. So I want to talk for a minute about leadership. And as I'm seeing leadership, it's got 2 components. It's got the personal component. Like, the new ways of leading aren't the way that I led when I was a hospital CEO. I really didn't need to lead a lot because I could manage. Young people came in and I'd say, I want you to move over to this unit, or I want you to learn this new method, and they did it. But now we've got a whole different set of challenges. We've got a whole different way. Patients don't do what we say anymore. Patients come back and say, excuse me, but I want to get my preferences on the table before we decide my path forward. So we've got complicated leadership challenges, and it requires new personal skills. It requires new questions of us when we come in. When I go into a hospital, the first thing I do is I ask the senior leaders these 4 questions. The first question is, do you know how good you are? Do you have a good way to measure quality through the eyes of the patient? Do you have some sense of knowing how good you are? Oftentimes I see a red, yellow, green report card from a year or 2 ago, but it isn't helpful information to say, how good are we doing today? The second question is, do you know where you stand relative to the best? And I would say, again, here, with transparency in the room, you can find out who's got a shorter length of stay or a more efficient process, who's eliminated central line infections, who's eliminated pressure sores, who's made an innovation in a new procedure, and then go visit, because the answers are in the room. But if you don't see that, you won't be able to create that visiting that's so important, I think, to creating the new models of care for your own patient. The third one is, do you know where variation exists? And we're going to talk quite a bit about that today, because variation does exist. You're going to hear about it today. We can fight over how to measure it, or we can just get in and see it, because once we can see it, we can really start to close it, and that's our professional obligation to patients. And then the last one is, do you know what your rate of improvement is over time? I don't want to see any static numbers anymore. Show me how you've done over the last 10 years on reducing mortality, or the last 5 years on reducing infection. Because in many leaders' heads, they look at the report card and they think, like I did when I was a CEO, I'm a little bit better than the national average, so I'm okay. And they end at that rather than saying, we're flat in performance over time, and that's not going to get us where we need to go. So all the data that you get, look at it over time, because that's going to answer the question, how good are we at getting better? And then on the structural side, I brought a picture of our kind of football. That's the New England Patriots. Because I think we've got a lot to learn from sports, and a lot of it is about huddles. A lot of it is about how we meet. And so I've been spending a lot of time in the last couple of months going to meetings in hospitals. And there's 2 kinds. One is I can go and sit in meetings I can follow a middle manager or a senior leader on a course of a day or 2 days or a week. And what you find in many cases is they're sitting in meetings all day long, one to another, and they're talking about the past. Huddles are really quick, standing up, and they're talking about the future. It's a whole different thing. And when you're in huddle mode, you're creating trust. You know what the capabilities are of the other people in the room. You're not resting on your past. You're predicting the flaws in the future. And so I would suggest, think about huddles as a great replacement. It's a structured communication device that really helps people to think. I had the great joy of sitting in huddles at Cincinnati Children's Hospital just 2 weeks ago. They start their huddles at 5 in the morning. And I sat in huddles from 5 in the morning where what could go wrong in the operating room, all the way through to the last huddle is 1 in the morning, where the senior residents are making rounds and they're predicting, can we have a safe night tonight? But I sat in the huddle in the operating room at 2:15, and the supply people were there, and the equipment people, and the anesthesiologists, and the leaders of each service. And I heard the nurse in charge of neuro say, we have 4 patients still in the operating room. No unexpected things happen today. We've got a lot of cases tomorrow. There's a complicated striker frame that we need to set up on a child. I'm really worried about that. And then they had a brief conversation with the supply people about how they would practice on the striker today and how they would work together to get it set up tomorrow. Every person talked about their own worries and rooms for tomorrow, and they all came together. And then one person stood up and said, we have 7 children in our operating room tomorrow who have had epileptic seizures in their life. These are those children, and these are how we have to prepare and protect them. We have 4 children who are diabetic that we're worried about, and this is how we'll protect those children. That's what huddles do. It's forward thinking, it's not past tense, it's collaborative, it's cross-functional, and it builds trust. And then Gemba walks, walking the floor. Gemba is the Japanese word for walking the front line. in Jim Womack's great book on how to do a Gimbal walk. It's a structural change that gets leaders doing what I did this morning. I did a Gimbal walk through the dialysis unit this morning, and walked through and started to take a look at patients who were there and flow problems and all the kind of things that happen. Gimbal walks is a managerial structure that will give you new eyes to see. And then you need a structured spread strategy. You've got excellence at everything, but just not everywhere. And that's the leader's job, to make sure that you take those innovations and you methodically spread them. We're doing a big project in Ghana on reducing mortality in children under 5. And we started a few years ago with 3 regions in the north of the country. They're in the most difficult to get to part. And we thought if we can solve it there, we can solve it anywhere. And then we had a map of Ghana, and every couple of months we're moving to new clinics, we're moving to new hospitals. And methodically, we've been able to cover the country of Ghana with these mortality change concepts to reduce death in children under 5 even faster than we thought. But it's about the map. And we know where we are succeeding, and we know where we have yet to go.